Hello, everybody. I'd like to welcome you to my new podcast, the new episode of Renew Motherhood. And this episode is about like-minded individuals. And I'd like to welcome Rosemary Gattuso to this podcast as my guest. I'm so honored to have you here, Rosemary. So please introduce yourself a little.
Thank you, Blanka. It's so wonderful to be here with you this evening for me. And I'm in Sydney, Australia, and I've been a family mediator for about 14 years now, working with families. Having originally started as a lawyer, actually, and I guess my story is that I pursued what I thought I wanted to do, and then learned that it wasn't for me. But as part of that process, I was introduced to mediation as an alternative way of resolving disputes, and it was actually a compulsory component as part of my legal studies. At the very end of my legal studies, I was introduced to mediation, and I thought, this is where I want to be.
That's great. So, and I think it's very nice to discover anything else inside of your topic, inside of your studies, actually, that you can see, okay, there is another way to go. So, and I'm always convinced if you do what you like, you're even the best in it. So if you just go for this, what you really like to do, I think no one can stop you. So you have gained so much experiences on your way with being a mediator from families. And what would you say is the strength you personally developed in this field?
Well, I think when you get to sit in a room with people at their, one of their most challenging moments in their life, it can be very, it can be a bit of an education. It can be challenging, but I did learn a lot about people generally, human behavior, why we respond in the way that we do. It got me reflecting on my own ways of being, because then I would be in front of, people, my clients, who would respond in very similar ways that I would initially respond, and also in very different ways. So sometimes it was like seeing a mirror of me. This is how I would respond if I was in conflict with someone, if I had broken up with someone, or I've done that, or that's been done to me. And so it was quite interesting to be that third-party neutral, that independent person there watching, and where my role is not to judge or take sides. It's more to help guide a conversation, so that, these separating parents going through divorce or separation and re-establishing their roles and responsibilities with each other, so that they're able to safely have a dialogue and rearrange their life.
Yeah, so I think communication is a great skill inside of this. Don't you think so?
Yes, and
to communicate.
And not just that, because when you are in the legal system, solicitors, lawyers are trained to ask questions in a certain way to prove a point, because they want to win. They want to get from A to B, and they will use words to get to that, or to get, other people to say
the answers that you want to win.
Whereas mediation is the complete opposite. And when you do go into mediation and use language that's more adversarial, like you would in a court system, then you're either going to get a complaint made against you, or it's going to be really hard to manage the mediation, because there's not as much trust, or people feel judged. And so at the beginning of every mediation, I would say to my clients, my role is not to take sides, to judge, or to give advice or an opinion. It's just to help guide the conversation.
Yes.
So I had to really emphasize in my head, okay, it's about using open language and non-judgmental language. And sometimes I would think, well, if I am saying something to one party in the mediation in private, then it should be something that if the other party was watching and listening, that they wouldn't feel judged.
Yes, yes. So that's a different way of thinking in your, yes, in your field of laws. And I think it can be difficult for someone if you just always have to be neutral. How do you perceive this? Is this difficult for you just to say, if you see, oh, this is really going mad here, just to place yourself down and say, I'm neutral, I don't judge, because it's the situation that you have and it's your inner self, you're as a person. How do you feel?
Right. I'm not a robot.
Yeah.
So I think it's more about how much can I manage my own judgment in the process, so that I might be thinking, oh, I wouldn't handle it that way, or I wouldn't let this happen or that, but it doesn't matter because it's their life and they know their family better than I do. I'm just there to help them get things on paper, or even just have a dialogue that gets new information into that system, or whatever needs to come out. So the language is very important. And then when you think about times when you felt judged yourself, it's because of that kind of language. So it really sort of made me be super aware of language and the impacts that has, because there's one mediator for each couple, or each separating couple. So it's not that they have, I'm a mediator for the husband or the wife or the whoever it is, or it's for both. So whatever I say to one, I'll say to the other. So it is a challenge. And I'd say in cases where I feel that my judgment is coming in and I might be not letting the mediation progress, then I can think of some examples where I was really sort of putting myself in there, and then I thought, hold on a minute, I'm not really showing understanding to this family, because that's how they work. Just because it's not how I work, it doesn't mean that I have to continually try to get the parents to get legal advice or do something else, to not, without saying, I don't think you should do that, but steering the process in a different way. And it's where there's resistance. That's for me where I can tell, where I'm sort of resisting what is happening naturally, and there are no major safety concerns, there's no domestic violence, there's no reason why it couldn't take place. It's just different to the way that I was raised, or the way that I would instinctively look at the challenge. And that's for me, because I kind of have a gauge of, am I showing judgment or am I showing understanding? And I use those two opposites to kind of help me, because sometimes it's easy to really tell yourself, no, I'm not being judgmental, but actually it is. So, and I had a few occasions where I thought, I'm not showing understanding to this family. And as soon as I had that split second in my head, then the mediation progressed, and the family was able to make arrangements that they would, if I wasn't there, they would do it anyway.
Yes.
So what's the difference?
Well, this comes to a point when I think you have to be really good aware of where you personally are placed, where your thoughts are, and where your emotions come up. So this is a very good strength, I think, to really be aware of where you personally are positioned, because bringing yourself back into the mediation part is crucial for your field, for your, what you're doing. And I think this is wonderful. Well, what would you say has been the biggest mistake you made that parents could learn from?
Oh, biggest mistake.
Is there anything?
I would say not trusting my own intuition. I think that would be a big one, or also getting intuition mixed up with an assumption.
Yes.
I think that, because, often I think, oh, I wish I did this that way. I had a feeling to go down this path or to do this. There was something inside of me that was pushing it, but I didn't follow it. So that's where I miss an opportunity with intuition, or where I thought I was following my intuition, but it was really my judgment, because they can kind of blur. And, because when you have it, you can make an assumption about something where you're piecing the evidence that's presented together, and it's very logical, and it can look like intuition.
Yes.
But it's not. It's not. Yes. It's very logical, processed thoughts.
Yes, right. So you really have to differentiate those things inside of yourself. Is it intuition, or is it the other path that's not leading to the good? Not always leading to the good. Well, it's rational, intellectual. Yeah. So, but yeah, following your intuition, that's great. I think every mother should do this, follow their intuition. So, because we are all based up with intuition. So
yes,
it's a faculty that we really should develop or dive into more, because with our, information age, this is sometimes forgotten.
Yes, and we've got so many opportunities to overanalyze everything.
Yeah.
And convince ourselves, I've got a gut feeling about this, it's going to go wrong. It's going to do, if I don't do this, if I don't act now, something really terrible is going to happen.
Yes.
Right. And often that's just our own sort of fear and judgment. And then I think it goes back to the idea of, when I was talking about judgment and being in the mediation room and having to be present, but not be completely overtaken and involve myself with whatever's happening with me in that moment. I think it's very similar with the intuition, because if we let ourself and everything else that's happening with us, and if we're at a stress time, then it's a perfect time for intuition to help. But it's also the perfect time for us to overanalyze and tell ourselves, that's my gut feeling, but it's my fear, it's my judgment.
Yes, right. So would you say that the sensitivity of people has changed in the last years?
I believe so. I mean, and when I talk about sensitivity, I mean this awareness of other people, this heightened awareness of other people's emotions and needs. And because what I've seen in mediation rooms, and I mean, I should note that I don't see children. I only would see the parents. So it's really just what the parents bring to the mediation, or if there's a psychologist or a child consultant who has met with the children, that's then part of the mediation, or who I've spoken with as part of it. So I don't meet the children, but what I'm hearing consistently and seeing more and more is that there are more children now who are very sensitive and aware of, I guess, their surroundings more than normal. And so I think it could be a mixture of that society is more aware of sensitivity generally, that maybe it was always there, but we're just seeing it more, and there's more opportunities. People are having therapy. People are using sort of words that you would hear from a therapist normally in everyday life. So society's changed, and then, there's been research on sensitivity as sort of people who are biologically more sensitive, and it's about 25% of the population. But then there's also our childhood experience that might have taught us that we had to be really aware of our surroundings and what other people might be thinking or feeling and doing. And so that child would present as a sensitive child. So, and it doesn't matter what the cause or the meaning behind sensitivity. It's more about how can we work with more sensitive children or who become sensitive adults in a way that really supports them, acknowledges them, and understands and actually uses it as a benefit, you know, as, well, this is one of my, you know, characteristics or part of my personality, part of my uniqueness. How can I make the most of that? And I'm seeing more and more. And of course, you know, parents come to me when they're going through separation. And so it's a time for sensitive children to rise.
Yes.
And for their sensitivity to be shown. And it could be a family with, you know, more than one child. And there's one who's obviously not managing the changes or the transition as well as others, as you know, so that might, you know, we see that. And then it's just asking parents to be, I guess, more individual in their approach with their children in a way that supports their individual characteristics. And that's a challenge when you've got more than one children going through separation and trying to come up with an arrangement that works for all of them. But you've got one who might need more structure, more routine, more notice of what's happening or what's going to happen, reassurance, or maybe more one-on-one time, or might need the parents to, and even extended family, to really watch their language and their body language and any reference to the other parent in front of them.
Yes. So are you giving advices? No, you don't like to give advices, but with those situations, with if you know there can be a child who is more sensitive, who needs something different, or how can you approach to the parents with this topic?
Yes, so
because they might have to make a change inside of them, usually, and especially in the situation if they are going to separate, I think.
Yes. And one way that I do that with parents is to ask them about their children and ask them, you know, go through each child one by one and look at their personalities, their characteristic, what they like, what they don't like, what they're, you know, good at, areas that they need support in. And, you know, this is where there's an opportunity for parents to say, well, you know, they're very emotionally aware. They, you know, get like they get upset if they see me upset, or you know, there's a lot of children now with very high EQ. You know, so that's
so they suffer if they see an animal suffering or like this.
That emotional intelligence. What did I say? Yeah, EQ. Is that what it's called? But yeah, with very high, very empathic, very compassionate, very kind, very soft souls there. And so then if you physically write down a list to describe as many words as possible on one side of the page, and then on the other side of the page, you can say, well, then as parents, what do we need to do together? What can we do together to support that individual child? Because, you know, they're doing really well in at school. Then they like playing sport. Socially, you know, they're a little bit shy. They're, you know, I see them get really impacted at changeover when, you know, they go from one parent to another and no one says hello, or, you know, just as very basic examples. Then maybe, okay, in that example, well, maybe we need to say hello to each other when we do that at that time, or just smile. You know, or whatever. There are, you know, even things like in school, okay, they need help in this area or in that area, or whatever the case may be. But putting it down on paper, and I guess in the mediation, I would help the parents do that. And so I'm there and we do it together. But you can even just think about it you know, individually as parents.
Would you say that fathers and mothers perceive their children differently, or would you say, have you experienced that they would both say, yes, this is the child who's always like this?
Yeah, well, look, yes and no, but it's also, if you have a sensitive child, then they might be acting one way with one parent and another way with the other parent, because they're so in tune with what each of their parents need or want, or what the child thinks that they need or want.
They are serving their parents.
Yeah. Yeah. So sometimes that in itself can be new for the parents, or it can be something that they've picked up already. And sometimes it can also cause conflict.
Yeah.
Because then it could be, you know, there's room for, say, a blame, or parents to sort of say, well, if that's happening like that, there's a reason for it. And I guess it's easy when you've broken up with someone because you don't want to be with them anymore, then it could be their fault, you know.
Absolutely.
But it can also be a very helpful exercise to help get parents on the same page. Sometimes they are, or they'll say very similar things. Sometimes for some parents it's a little bit harder than others to articulate their, you know, the characteristics and qualities of their child. It can also be quite emotional for them as well. I mean, we're talking about sensitive children, but there's also sensitive adults.
Yeah. Yes, and especially in the situation when they are going to be separated, there has to be something happened before they come to you. So they bring a pack of challenges with them, I think.
That's right. And it's quite, you know, it can be, you know, parents going through grief and loss of that relationship, but also grieving the loss of the family unit.
Yeah.
Because then it can be hard to describe, you know, your child in, you know, in an open way to a stranger, to me, and even to the other parent, if you haven't had a conversation with them for many months in a room together.
Yes, right.
And then thinking, well, I'm not even seeing my child as much as I want to.
Yeah.
And that can just make it a bit challenging.
Yes. Okay. So you are helping parents with their children in a particular way. Having told me before that you apply a strength-based perspective, which means to differentiate between looking at what's wrong in this situation versus what's strong. And could you please explain this a little more?
Yes. Well, when I started working as a mediator, I was in an office or in an environment where the organization used a strengths-based approach. And essentially what a strengths-based approach is, you look at the strengths, look at what's strong in a situation as opposed to what's wrong, you know, which can be a bit challenging because today's society, a lot of the emphasis is on what's wrong. And even in my role as a mediator, it's because the relationship has broken down. That's why they're coming. So the default is often to look at what's wrong. But when I started working in this organization, they used a strengths-based approach with me. And, you know, the way that I worked and anything that my skills were often acknowledged and not just acknowledged, but also applauded. And I was given work that complemented my style. And so they were really looking at me as an individual and my uniqueness and building on that. And I felt my own confidence and sense of self really took a big boost at that, you know, just using that. So then I thought, okay, I really understand it now because it's been applied to me. So now I can see the benefit and how to apply it in my work. So, and that's where I guess I got that idea of using judgment and understanding when I was talking earlier about, you know, my role in the mediation is not to judge and how to gauge. because judgment is when I'm under the what's wrong lens, but whereas understanding is when I'm more on the what's strong side of things. So to help that. And I found that in mediations where the lens that the particular family took was more towards what's strong, they were able to transition a lot smoother and quicker, as opposed to where the lens was on what's wrong, sorry. It was a bit slower and more challenging, and there was more potential for conflict there.
Yes.
Because there was more about looking at blame and punishment and fault, whereas when you're more on the what's strong lens, there's an opportunity for personal growth. There's opportunity to look at the way things have worked and find a new way. So it's not a mistake, it's a learning opportunity.
It seems like
looking forward to the future rather than the past, with forgiveness as well. That's a big part.
Yeah, that's great. So I think it seems like this is a way for the positivity, for opening. Yes, a good way to go, to follow. If you're just looking on what's strong, it drives you forward. But instead of what's wrong, you're living in the past, and this is blocking you somehow. Would you agree?
Yes, because when you're looking at what's wrong, then there's continually, I can't believe he did that. He shouldn't have done that. She shouldn't have done. And you just get stuck.
Yeah.
And it's hard to move forward. But I think it's also good to acknowledge that sometimes we need to get stuck.
Okay.
And we do get there, and we are, because we can't just be positive all the time.
Yeah.
But if we can learn from the times that we haven't, that's where we can move forward as well.
Yeah, that's great. So what's the number one advice you would like to give separated parents regarding their children right now?
I would say
so many couples, so many families, and
I would say think about the memories that your children will have of this time. And I would break that down into, will it be focusing on what's wrong or what's strong?
That's great. Thank you. This is wonderful advice, I think. You have also written a book. What's the title and what's it about?
Yes, thank you. My book is called It's Not You, It's Me, A Chronic Overthinker's Guide to Self-Reflection. And it's really about my observations as a mediator on how people manage adversity. And I look at trends that I noticed, and I use the what's strong and the what's wrong and what's strong lens, and then propose a strengths-based tool for self-reflection.
That's great. So yes, I can see that you did a lot of self-reflection, because you're just showing up as a person who says, okay, I know where I am, and this is your strength. I think it's wonderful. People reach out to you, they can gain so much from you. And do you have a special offer?
Well, I do offer workshops and have my book for sale on my website. So I'm based in Australia, in Sydney, but my book is also available in all over the world. So if you come to my website, or just Google, come to my website or Google my book, there'll be links to the relevant continent that you're on.
Yeah, great. So everyone can reach out, everyone can buy it from everywhere, probably.
Yes.
Almost everywhere.
And you can send me a message.
Oh yeah.
Reach out in any way on all sort of social media platforms, my website. If you have any questions or just want to chat or connect anyway.
Oh, that's great. What's the title of your website?
It's rosemarygattuso.com.
Oh yeah. So everyone can find you with your name. That's perfect. So that's wonderful. I love to have you here on my podcast as my guest. It's such an amazing topic, because I know that there are so many families going to be separated and the children just in between. And this is so awesome to have you here to talk about this, to say, hey, we have to become aware of what we are doing here and to not, yes, to take our children on this journey with us.
Yes. And I think that's also where it's important for parents to realize that, yes, we're going through separation. It's a challenging time. Then if you need any support personally, you know, or even in terms of how to separate, if you need legal advice or mediation advice or any, take it, because it's going to help you through this process and help you then be able to focus more on the children and what they need.
Great. This is awesome. Thank you very much for being here as my guest, Rosemarie. I really enjoyed it. And yes, I like to have you, all the listeners here, to follow me on my podcast, and new episodes will show up. And I'm excited to give you more. Have a wonderful day.
Thank you.